It is fascinating that the symbol of manhood cries a lot. Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre, and today on the show, again, one of my favorite guests, Sarah Dara Littman. She has a new book out, Some Kind of Hate. It's a YA novel about online radicalization through video games, not virtual worlds, but we'll get into the specifics. In the book, 15-year-old Declan Taylor gets sucked into a world of white supremacy, a world of anti-Semitism specifically, but also Sarah mentions Islamophobia as basically two sides of the same coin. And the book is quite brilliant because it also shows how this online rhetoric turns into real life violence. So there's a lot of suspense here. Welcome back, Sarah Littman. Thank you for coming to visit us in the virtual realm.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be back.
It's a really an excellent book, and I have to tell you, as a father of a now 20-year-old, I read this and thought, oh my God, one worry I don't have anymore. And I'm not going to lie to you, my wife and I, we both had the worry because I'm working in the online realm with young people and working in games and worlds. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I would say I'm more aware than maybe your average parent of what can go on in these spaces and how young men who are looking for direction are easy pickings for white supremacy groups specifically, right?
Yeah.
And I want to add one more thing. I mean, now that my son is 20, I have to say everybody's like, okay, what happened to your son? Is he a neo-Nazi? No, thank God. That's one worry. I mean, parents' worries never end, but that's one worry that I basically checked off the box. So we're good.
I am happy to hear it.
You start the book off with a trigger warning that I want to read, and I put it here on the slide projector. Some Kind of Hate was a hard book to research and write. It isn't an easy book to read. The contents include white nationalist ideas based on anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, Islamophobia, racism, misogyny, and violence. I do not condone these ideas. They are included for two reasons. They are necessary to understanding Declan's journey, and because it is important to recognize coded language and rhetoric used to promote hateful ideas when you encounter it in everyday life and online spaces. Why was it important to you to include this at the beginning of the book?
Well, first of all, I think if you're going to encounter something like this, like I find it hard when I'm reading aloud to read some of the things that I wrote, because they are ideas that are completely anathema to me. But so I felt like, I wanted to warn people what was in the book and also to give them permission to put it down if it was too much.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard.
It is hard.
Yeah. And I mean, I can tell you, I started keeping a 5-year journal, like a thought a day journal in 2021, which was when I was really intensely working on this book. And now when I go back and see my entries from that year, I realize how incredibly miserable and depressed and overwhelmed I was from being
Mhm.
immersed in all of this,
I want to
particularly with
talk a little.
everything else is going on in the world around
Right.
outside.
I want to actually. Why not? Well, give us a little overview of what the book is about, and then we can jump right to the kind of research that you had to do, maybe like what you encountered. Because I think, um, what is I read an article about people who work in Kenya. I mean, this has nothing to do with your book, but it just popped into my head. I read this article about people who in Kenya basically look at content that they have to scrub from social media sites. Graphic content of sex and violence and everything in between. And these people are completely traumatized. Now, I don't know
Yeah,
if how traumatized you are about research, but I would imagine if you go into these uh you know games or groups online, I can see that it's hard not to lose any type of hope for humanity going forward.
it also can make you extremely paranoid.
Hmm.
Um, and I was a political columnist for 13 years, and I've had threats and you know um, rape threats and people sending stuff to my house, which is why I ended up in the address confidentiality program in my state for a while.
What is that
Um,
called? What is that called?
Address confidentiality program. It's
Oh,
for
they don't
yeah,
publish your address.
yeah. So like when I got married, my wedding, the registration of my wedding certificate was suppressed. So if people go and try and find it, they can't find it.
Hmm.
And my voter registration is like suppressed. So yeah, so it was sort of like a safety thing.
Mm.
But yeah, so it gets to the point where when you're sort of immersed in all of this stuff, um, it can really do your head in.
Mm.
So, did you wanted me to tell a bit about what the book's about, right?
What is the book about? Yes.
So, the book is about two teenagers who are teammates on a baseball team, a high school baseball team in upstate New York, the kind of area where um, industry has departed. And there is that kind of economic lack of economic opportunity. And and one of them does something stupid, and he's relying on being a pitcher to go to college, and he does something really stupid and ends up damaging his pitching arm, which may mean he cannot afford to go to college. And so then he spends a lot of time online and eventually gets involved with online in sort of white nationalist spaces, and then gets involved with an in-person group.
Hmm. And what is really interesting here, there's two things. You employ this, and we're going to get a little reading later as well. You employ this thing that you did before, where you talk about, where you tell the story from these two points of views, from Declan, the guy who gets sucked into this white nationalist group, and his friend Jake, who's Jewish and who witnesses sort of this alienation that's going on between these two best friends, and you kind of go between those two. um, and the other thing that I want to add to the basic plot outline is that this economic anxiety is very real for the main character, because his father is laid off, and his mother works as a hairstylist, and um, that's where that is so important to me when we tell these stories, the precarity of people, and then young people who witness this, the lack of stability of their own families are ripe for the pickings. I mean, that doesn't make it exclusive. I'm not saying that, oh, people
Well,
who don't
yeah,
have jobs go. Yeah,
there are
go ahead.
plenty well-off people like Richard
Yeah, yeah.
Spencer who
That's where
end
I
up,
was gonna get
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So, but one of the
But it's
things,
important for these tropes because the trope of the globalists and the Jews taking over, and they're to blame, and with the women, we'll get into that too. That works with Declan, right?
yeah,
Uh,
and
it's an
and
important part.
also I feel very strongly. I lived in the UK for 15 years. My husband and I are both self-employed, so our health insurance is insane.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that I wanted to, so when Declan's father loses his job, they also lose their health insurance,
Hmm.
and that has an impact on Declan's ability to recover his mobility and his pitching arm, because
Hmm.
if he doesn't have health insurance, they can't afford to pay for PT.
Hmm.
And that's something, I am fortunate that I can pay my crazy expensive health insurance. I am counting down the years till I can get on Medicare. Um, but there are so many people who can't. And
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I've thought, as someone who has mental health problems, whatever, I can't tell you how many times I thought, there for the grace of God go I. And it's one of the reasons that I have lobbied very hard for universal health care in this country.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have not got there, but
And I mean, again, I mean, this
still
also
fighting that
affects.
fight.
Yeah, and you're mentioning, and again, let's just make this very clear because we had this discussion before we went on air about, okay, sure, unemployed people who are left behind by the digital age or the information age. Of course, they're going to be like becoming authoritarian, voting for right wingers and Trump and whatnot. And I think it's very important that that is not the case. And if you go back to history, and look at who supported the Nazis in the very beginning. This was not the working class who was left behind. So let's make that very clear. But nonetheless, I find it important because when we're talking about these 15-year-olds, when they look at their parents, how they're struggling, um, it's that is affecting them, and that makes it ripe for the pickings. And the people who do the pickings online, the people who run these white nationalist groups, and again, I mean, it goes from rhetoric to actual action in real life, which is interesting. Declan defends himself, Sarah, several times with this whole like, oh, we're just joking, right? When they play games and they they say offensive things. He says, "Ah, that we're just joking," and even later said, "Well, I didn't kill anybody."
Yeah. Well, and I think I sent you an article just from this morning. I mean,
And I have that, and here it is. And this is the publisher of the National Review, right? And he
yeah,
what is
he was the former publisher, so he's running for
so
the
tell us.
he's
Yeah,
running for the city clerk, who is responsible for registering people to vote and things like that,
in Connecticut.
um, in Connecticut, and he has posted all these anti-Semitic and transphobic and um, Islamophobic and fat-phobic comments online. And when they called him on it, he was like, "Well, I was just being sarcastic."
So
And
real quick here, I just want to make sure, Sarah, sorry to interrupt, but I have this this article here on the slide projector. We can clearly see that this person, this former publisher of the National Review in Connecticut, running for public office, is not a 15-year-old. He's a grown man, and he is doing what exactly? He is posting, he is replacing words with Jew.
well, apparently he was apparently he was like, calling people like Obama, Barack Jew Obama, Hillary Jew Clinton,
Jesus
um,
Christ, that's not even that. It's not even.
it's not even sarcastic, it's
No,
just, it's pretty
it's
blatant.
lame.
So but what really struck me from having done the research I did is that oh, it was just a joke, oh, it's just sarcasm, is literally out of the Daily Stormer style book. They so in the Daily Stormer style book, which was leaked in 2018,
Incredible that they have a style book. I have the AP
I
style
know,
book in my library. I can't
yeah.
believe it.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to find the paragraph. They so under when they're talking about the tone of writing, it's under the headline lulls. The tone of the site should be light. Most people are not comfortable with material that comes across as vitriolic, raging, non-ironic hatred. The undoctrinated should not be able to tell if we're joking or not.
There it is.
Um,
Exactly. That's the thing. This is so important, folks, to understand here what we're dealing with. And people in the audience probably go like, "Duh, Drexter, I know this stuff. I live online. Who are you, a boomer?" And I would
yes,
say,
fucking
yes, I
boomer.
kind of am, but um, no, I mean, yeah, this is not a new phenomenon, but it's, I think, really important to remind ourselves that the the this kind of plausible deniability, if you will, is this strategy of pushing in this type of content into the public discourse for a
Well,
long
and
time.
yeah, it's like they're trying to move the Overton window by, getting this language out there. And then when called on it, just, saying, "Oh, I was joking. Can't you humorless bitches take a joke," kind of
Yeah,
thing. Um,
that's what
so
Elon does. Remember
oh
Elon?
yeah.
We're going to
Oh,
talk about it.
Elon. Yeah,
Hmm.
no, Elon is definitely has the mentality of a
Don't
12-year-old,
say it.
unfortunate.
Don't
Yeah.
say it, Sarah, because in an email to me, in a private email, I'm sorry, I'm going to leak this email. You actually compared Elon Musk to a third grader, and I think this, and you
Oh
yourself
yes.
said this is an insult to all third graders, and I think you owe third graders a public apology, Sarah.
I am sorry to every third grader that I maligned so viciously with this by comparing them to Elon Musk. Yes.
And the tragedy of all this, and we're completely going off my run sheet, but I know people enjoy this. We're talking with Sarah Dara Littman about her new book, Some Kind of Hate, a fantastic YA novel, thriller almost. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. The stakes are very high, but we're also talking about the context here, and we're going back and forth. And I just want to throw this in because these anti-Semitic tropes, there's a particular case. I just want to put this out there because I saw it today. Um, Greta Thunberg was photographed with a "I Stand with Palestine" sign, and in the back was her plushy octopus toy. I don't know if you've seen this, but this went completely viral, and now people have responded to this by saying, "Oh, look, the blue octopus is a well-known anti-Semitic trope." So Greta Thunberg is standing with Palestine, with innocent civilians here. She's making this stand, and people online are now uh, have now finally have the proof that she is also an anti-Semite. And people are posting these pictures together with these other. I don't have the full picture of the octopus uh, uh,
Oh,
grabbing here the
there's
entire world, but there's a lot of
yeah.
pictures like that online, and it is an anti-Semitic trope. But to jump here from a plushy toy in the background to this is insane. So this is the other side of the coin, Sarah, right? Where we're in a world that is so incredibly confused that you can also kind of construct um, anti-Semitism into, you can infer it into a situation where there is no anti-Semitism.
Yeah. No, when I saw that picture, I was like, I wasn't quite convinced about that. So particularly when I saw the sources that it was coming from, I wasn't 100% convinced. And I worry that when people are claiming everything is anti-Semitic, that then it means that people see nothing as anti-Semitic.
Well, that's what I would say. And the guy who's quote tweeting this is Travis View. He hosts a fantastic podcast on QAnon. It's called QAnonymous, I think. And what he says, all discourse in the future will be hapless decoding of supposedly secret symbols, warring online tribes scalping the never-ending glut of information into the most exciting narratives. Infinite puzzle pieces with no solution, but can be constructed into equally infinite forms. And again, the tragedy is that anti-Semitism is real. Those tropes are real, but here they're being weaponized to and by the weaponization, you, like you say, they become meaningless. Everything becomes meaningless, which is again going back to the Daily Stormer playbook, exactly what these trolls, I think, want.
And that's why, I speak quite often and write quite often about information literacy. There's a great organization in the US called the News Literacy Project, and they have really fantastic resources. But for schools and for for everyone. But one of the things that I try and tell people is, if you see something online and it provokes really strong emotion, then then don't share it right away. Do some lateral searches, see where, if you see it from one source, see where it's, if you can find it from different sources, and if they're sort of what I would consider legit sources. So yes, whoever the resistor said, think first, then talk. Exactly. But also think first before you repost and spread it. So the Stanford did this whole study about how people fact check, and fact checking laterally, like doing lateral searches, is one of the most effective ways to fact check. But then we get into the whole thing about how algorithms work. And one of the things I found after researching some kind of hate was that when I was in the first pass proof page, which is pretty late in the game, whenever I tried to check a Jewish source, because I had been researching all these white nationalist sources, that if I tried to fact check something Jewish, practically I would almost have to go to the second page of results to get an actual Jewish source. Most of the first page were either Messianic Jews, or they would either Messianic Jews or like Christian nationalist type sites. The Messianic Jews ones, it's like, they've got Hebrew, they call the guy a rabbi. But then like all of it, you read through the site and all of a sudden they're talking about Jesus, the Lord. And it's like, huh? What? So, and I'm, a pretty well-educated Jewish woman, and I can tell the difference, but a lot of people can't because they don't have that prior knowledge.
And
so they're, yeah.
And that's the thing. And I said it before, Sarah, I completely admit that I was completely naive about the advent of the internet being this force for enlightenment and greater understanding and greater empathy for other cultures, etc. And I should have seen, like many others have, more clear-eyed people, that when you put the fire hose of information on people who have no real literacy, and I also don't want to kind of blame people that are not equipped with this literacy, because we see, like you just pointed out, is a great example. Um, the fact that the internet and search engines are owned by private corporations who have a incentive to make money, that kind of profit motive is often at odds with unbiased information. So,
And
there's not even
they
any kind of conspiracy behind it. It's simply like, hey, I can make more money with this thing, so I'm going to do it.
well, they want engagement, and people tend to be engaged. If they can promote conflict, they
Yeah.
get you on their site. Like, I don't know if there's a cartoon, I think it was a New Yorker cartoon, where the spouse is calling for the husband, and he's like in front of his computer. It's like, I'll be there in a minute, there's something wrong on the internet. So like he's has to get in his 2 cents of curing what's wrong on the internet. That's like my husband and I joke about that a lot. But yeah, they benefit from promoting conflict.
But
So
yeah, and the teacher in your book is doing a great job. It's an uphill battle when you're in the classroom. And we'll read this excerpt in a little bit, because his strategy for those 15-year-olds, for these high school students, is basically to teach them, look at the source, uh, really kind of go dig a little deeper. Where does this come from? Who wrote this? And then, of course, he uh, tells the kids who get a good grade, yeah, you're using this source of this reputable scientific institution. However, uh, Sarah, what do we do when we have academic people, which sometimes does happen, people with degrees, with doctor titles, uh, also kind of, you know, go and monetize their radicalization schemes?
I can't imagine who you're talking about.
Well, let me tell this quick anecdote, because I'm reading your book and I'm reading like they're gaming, they're in the game and they're going like, yeah, women suck, and oh my God, my mom's makes me do this and stuff like that. And in my head, I'm going like, oh, this is so good. This is so authentic, like how these kids, talk about this kind of stuff. And oh my God, I wish Sarah would like involve Mr. Dr. Jordan Peterson, your average Canadian transphobe, misogynistic shrink. And I turn the page, and let's see, I have this slide, and I'm going to read this. Where is it? Here we go. I'll put this on the slide projector. I turn the page. Oops, sorry. This is the actual quote from where he's talking. Okay, I give it away. Um, this is not Jordan Peterson talking. This is in fact Jared Stonepen. Now, who is Jared Stonepen? And one of the
Well,
gamers says, Stonepen's one of the few people at those elitist universities who isn't a Marxist tool. Start with the 10 rules of manhood. So anyway, I'm turning the page, and here is Sarah Littman actually involving a character, putting a character into that story, a thinly veiled version of Jordan Peterson.
so the name Jared Stonepen is actually an anagram
Mm-hmm.
for Jordan Peterson. So it's really very not thinly veiled.
And now here, okay, let me just read this, because it's funny, because Shyla prepared these slides, and I picked this quote from your book, which is not Jordan Peterson. It's the character Jared Stonepen, the anagram. But of course, we had to put a picture of Jordan Peterson here, where he's crying. He cries a lot. There's nothing wrong with crying. And this quote that I'm reading, and I'm going to read this in Jordan Peterson's quote, is not from Jordan Peterson. This is from your character. And then I'll ask you, how did you kind of distill this? Did you just copy and paste it from his book? So here it goes. Again, I apologize because on the slide it says Jordan Peterson. It's not Jordan Peterson, it's your character. Here it goes. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty, instability, and complexity in our lives today. Kids feel alone and unloved. Men feel emasculated when they can't work and provide for their family. Women feel trapped by the pressure to have it all while feeling like terrible mothers. All we hear about is how the patriarchy is wrong, but it's worked well for thousands of years. The things that made men strong are now labeled toxic. Okay, thank you for the round of applause. Now, who is Jordan Peterson, Sarah, and why did you involve this character, Jared Stonepen, in your book?
Well, I mean, obviously I had heard of Jordan Peterson before I started researching the book, but I interviewed this young man who lives in West Virginia, had gone down the rabbit hole, had come back out of the rabbit hole when I first spoke to him. And I did a Zoom call with him. We had this really great conversation, spoke for like an hour and a half. And he kind of led me down how he got through the rabbit hole, got into the rabbit hole, and Jordan Peterson was his gateway drug. So he was feeling lost, he was depressed, and he started listening to Jordan Peterson, watching his videos, and he called Jordan Peterson the father of our generation.
That's what exactly, and one of your characters actually says that, right? He says this is the father of our generation.
I know, because I had to use that because I was like, oh my God, if this is the father of a generation, we are so sorry. Can I say fuck?
Yeah, please.
Okay, yes, we are so fucked.
And we totally are, because this is really what he unfortunately has become. And again, he is a professor at Canadian University who got into the news because he objected to using gender, the new gender norms or the gender requirements to use the
pronouns.
Correct the pronouns, to have all pronouns in I don't even know if it was the papers or in official communiques, but so yeah, he was basically saying this is academic freedom or whatnot, and then he was pushed into the limelight, and then he wrote a bestseller, 12 Rules for Life, and that bestseller is still here, and it's translated in German. It's all over the big stores, and
but also what this young man told me was that he, from listening to Jordan Peterson, then he got on to Stefan Molyneux, who's a Canadian white nationalist, and then because he's watching Stefan Molyneux videos, then that took him to another place. And so that was, and then his algorithms kept taking him deeper and deeper. And I thought that was fascinating. I recently, he told me I tried to keep in touch with the people I interviewed, and we had a phone call recently, and he sounds like he might be going back down. I mean, not down the same rabbit hole, but he said something to me. He's been doing a lot of exploration. He's clearly trying to find sort of where he sits spiritually and intellectually and politically. And he said something to me about how Jews believe that God was a dragon. And I'm like, record scratch. Like, what? I said, where did you hear that? Because, I've been Jewish my entire life and gone to Hebrew school, and I read all the footnotes in the, when we're reading the Torah, and I have never heard that. So where are you getting that information? So he sent me this YouTube video where he got it. And it's one of those videos that clearly is a computer and generated voice.
Mm-hmm.
So, which always to me is like, okay, if it's a computer generated voice, like that's a big red flag to me. But I said to him, look, if you take anything away from this conversation that we've had, it's if you want to learn about Judaism, you should not be learning from it from a random YouTube video. Like, if you really want to learn about what Jewish people think, you have to go to an actual Jewish source. And I said to him, you're welcome to call me or email me, but here are some good websites if you actually want to learn about Judaism from people who are actually Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
which seems like a sort of logical thing to do.
It seems a logical thing to do, but it's also then, of course, if you go deeper, and this should also be, again, here we are with, information literacy and all this stuff, and I don't have the answer to solve this because if I don't know, because there's also obviously within the Jewish community or any community difference in opinion on also history. I guess my question is, how do we know that a site is reputable or that even an academic is reputable? I mean, we live in a world where people dispute the reputability of people with degrees, and we just used Mr. Poor crying Mr. Peterson here, somebody with who used to have at least some sort of pedigree, who has made I mean, it's easy to make fun of him because he's such a clown, but there are other people who are respected within certain communities as experts, and they have nefarious, I mean, at least I would stipulate that some of them have some, nefarious goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be teaching information literacy with every single subject we teach in school. So when I was teaching full-time undergraduates in 2020, and I was teaching 2 sections of business writing. Now, you wouldn't necessarily think that you need to specifically talk about information literacy in business writing, but you do. So I would show them a website, and I'd just scroll through it and say, okay, do you think this is a good source to use on your papers? And some would say yes. I would test their pre-knowledge and say, okay, do you think this is a legitimate source? And some people would say yes, some people would say no. And then I would go through all the reasons why it was not a legitimate source and why they shouldn't use it in their papers.
Mm-hmm.
I also would do a session on changing an ideological argument, because I was like, when you write a paper for me, a persuasive paper, I want a logical, fact-based argument, not an ideological argument. And so I would go through different sort of left-wing and right-wing talking points that were ideological and say, okay, now how can we change this into a logical argument? So, but it's a lot of work. And
Well,
I
but
find
yeah,
that people are not coming to the college level
yeah.
with sufficient training. Like, we have to start from kindergarten and like
No,
keep
absolutely.
going. Yeah.
I agree with you 100%, but I guess I'm saying uh that we're also in a different in a far worse moment where I don't know how to get out of it. What you're saying is a great proposal, but it goes much deeper than right wing versus left wing, because those terms also are completely up to debate. I mean, if I go
Yeah.
to the suburbs to my dad, who feels he is liberal, I don't see him as liberal at all. I mean, first of all, I don't classify myself as liberal. That's not the issue, but I would say that he himself classifying as liberal is false in my mind. Um, but that has to also to do with the overtone window, which has shifted a lot. So, for
Yes.
example, right now in Germany, there is no political party that is basically saying that we should not be super hardcore against migration. Which I'm just using that as one example because there's a new law coming in. So right now, for someone who is basically coming at this from a secular humanist level like I do, where I cannot just sort out immigrants based on their economic value from a humanitarian standpoint, for me there is no political party right now to vote for, right?
Yeah.
So those liberal values, or what liberals would say is part of my value, they have disappeared from the discussion completely in the political realm.
And also I
Yeah.
think we are complex beings, and um you know, I consider myself sort of left of center on a lot of things, or I would say, liberal on some things. But then, like, when it came to certain parenting things, I was much more conservative than my daughter's allegedly conservative
Hmm.
friends' parents,
Hmm.
who were very loudly proclaiming themselves as conservative. For example, I would never serve an underage child alcohol without reference to their parents. Um, this ultra conservative Trumpist father of one of my daughter's high school friends offered
Gave him a shot
offered
of whiskey as a 12-year
well,
old.
like, no, but he's like offering my daughter, my underage daughter, alcohol
Oh my God.
without asking
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
And I mean, I gave, if I'm out with my daughter, I would let her take sips of my wine because I was trying to teach her, like, oh, okay, wine is something that we enjoy with a meal. It enhances the taste of food, blah, blah, blah. And and he's just like offering her booze, like, so that's why I get like upset about, like, the binary nature of all of this,
Oh yeah. No, I mean
because
again,
we
yeah.
yeah
And that
we are.
that sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. I keep
No, no, no,
interrupting.
no, 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 that's fine. Yeah, I'm just
I
on
mean,
my parenting rant.
no, that's a good example. I mean, it has always been like that, and politics is complex, and there's not a binary thing. There's all sorts of combinations, and people make also their decisions on such a variety of information and resources. I guess, and we can't solve this today. And you're doing a good
Oh,
job.
shucks.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I invited you to provide the silver bullet to solve this, because I do think, and again, your book is fantastic in that sense, because to me, and maybe that's because I'm reading it through the lens of a father and also someone whose parents were teachers and everything. And you're looking at that and you see the difficulty of this really well-meaning and fantastic history teacher to deal with. Um, when he talks about the Crusades, and I think we're going to go to our reading in just a moment, because that illustrates that a little bit. The game that the kids are playing, that is sort of the recruiting tool for the white nationalists, is called Imperialist Empires, and it is about the Crusades. And this history teacher is doing a great job of making sure that kids understand the sources. And you know what, Sarah? I mean, I went to high school in 1991, and I had a great history teacher, and he recommended a book. And those were innocent times compared to today, but he recommended a book that was controversial at the time and now is basically canon. But it was written in 1974, and the author, a German author, was basically saying that economic liberalism will lead to fascism for many different reasons, because the economic inequality, and also all these things that are kind of now, I I would say, established, that is a factor that can lead to authoritarianism. But back
Right.
then, when he
Trickle
and he
down
yes,
economics, for
this
example. Yes.
this book was written in 74, was controversial. He recommended this in 91, and a fellow student, Corinna Krötsch, said, to our teacher, excuse me, Mr. Lena, but my father does not allow me to read this book because he says it's biased. And this was a conservative household. And that father was looking at that book and said, what is this, Marxist teacher, this Marxist tool, recommending these students to, learn about fascism. This
Well, if
must
we
not
look at
stand.
what's happening in certain states of our
Yes.
country, there are actual people in public office saying that we should, study both sides of the Holocaust, and
Hmm.
that slavery was actually good because it gave slaves valuable
Yeah.
tools. And
Like
I
learning the
mean,
violin.
you cannot make this shit up. Like it's really scary.
Shyla
Yeah.
prepared this slide here with books that are banned. Mildred Taylor, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas is apparently banned. Mouse, of course, Art Spiegelman gave a bunch of really great interviews. You can see him online. Mouse is a fantastic. For Black Girls Like Me is banned. Gender Queer is banned. What is this one here? National
my
Gallery.
my my own publisher, Scholastic, of my YA novels. I'm sure, I don't know if you heard all of this, it's been all over the news here. They made an optional diversity box,
Uh-huh.
that it was the book fairs, and like I was one of this, as a Scholastic author, my books weren't in the quote diversity box, but I signed, there was an open letter with like 1,500 authors and illustrators, many of whom were Scholastic authors like myself, who were saying, I actually sent my editor and the head of Scholastic Press an article I wrote in 2003, after the Anne Frank in the World exhibit had been at our local high school, and like talking about the 3 lessons that we wanted people to take away from that. One of which was, the road to Auschwitz didn't happen overnight. Like it was
Mhm.
that, people like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump and all these people, Greg Abbott, and these state legislatures that started, they would do one thing and then people weren't in the streets protesting, and then they would, and companies would kowtow to them like Scholastic did to these um, fascists in Florida and Texas.
So let me get this straight real quick because Monkey already retrieved the link. Thank you. So Scholastic in the book fairs basically gave the schools an option to not display the diversity part of the fair.
Yes.
Jesus
And
Christ.
yeah, no, I know. And like, so a friend of mine, Susan Tan, wrote this adorable, absolutely adorable picture book, chapter books series, called Pets Rule. She's Asian and Jewish, and the book was illustrated by an Asian woman, and that was in the diversity box. And so
Mhm.
I asked, my editor, and I was like, why, what possible justification? It's about a chihuahua who wants to rule the world, like seriously,
Oh,
what
there's
possible?
authoritarianism right there.
Yeah, but
DeSantis should love that, no? He wants to be the Chihuahua. Why not?
he does want to be the chihuahua, but the chihuahua learns to work with other animals. It's not like,
Oh, oh, oh.
like maybe they were objecting to the
Having
the
queer
communal.
dolphins in the cabinet. Mhm.
I don't know, but anyway, yeah. So and the response I got back was that they wanted to have some bestsellers in the diversity box display to draw kids over, and I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Mhm.
Like that is the worst excuse I've ever heard. So anyway, they had to back down, and they've lost a lot of goodwill from, from authors, illustrators, educators. And I said to, the head, one of the people I was communicating with at Scholastic, this is going to be a future Harvard Business School case study of how a well-loved and well-established brand fucked itself by, I'm using fuck a lot today. I think it's because
That's
I'm
not a
mad.
problem. YouTube
Okay.
will, I mean, as you know, the issue is with language. It's not with censorship. It's language. It's decorum. The issue is not
Yes, sorry.
authoritarianism per se. It's about how, please, would you please go into this gas chamber? Sorry that I'm not using the F word. I'm politely asking you. So,
Yes,
Sarah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
let's get them priorities straight here.
Yes, no, and yes, Lily, fuck is one of the best words in the English language. So I try and learn it in as many languages as possible. This tells you something about me. When I was a teenager, I tried to learn swear words and my friends and I, we would do this. We'd like try to learn swear words in as many different languages as possible. So if you're, please share them with me.
Shyla says here, she said, DeSantis says he doesn't ban books because in Florida, the individual schools make the decision, not he. So he's passing that on. Shyla says sleight of hand. Because he
that's
passed
such
along.
crap.
Yeah.
That is such crap. I mean, my niece is a high school English teacher and debate coach, and she's actually thinking of leaving Florida because of the teaching environment there.
It must be really, 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 really tough to, when you work in these environments. I mean, it's just okay. Anyway, we have a lot to get to. We also have to read, but you know what? Before we read, can you explain the protocols of the elders of Zion? And I pulled up here because this is also important, because this is still, I mean, again, this is a fake. I don't know if it's the original fake news or whatever, but it is highly influential in creating anti-Semitic tropes and perpetuating them. And I don't know what the quote unquote reputation of this day is, but I'm sure people still fall for it. This is on the
oh yeah, people still quote it all the
this
time.
is a 1934 edition that we have here from Chicago that I pulled online, and let me see. Shyla did another
You can buy
collage here.
it on Amazon, I think. Yeah.
Right. These are some of the things that are in the protocols here: the organization of disorder, the Gentiles as slaves, the criminal element, the rise of the Jewish God. So what is that book? How would you explain what that is?
So what it is it was actually created in Tsarist Russia in the late 1800s, I believe. And basically it purports to be the minutes of a secret cabal, a secret globalist cabal of Jews, obviously, who are trying to take over the world. And, they are managing, they're trying to control the financial aspects of the world, the political aspects of the world. And when you read the Daily Stormer style guide,
This is still the most absurd thing that I've ever heard. I'm sorry.
I know. It would be funny if it weren't like actually like being used for this, but the prime directive in this Daily Stormer style guide is always blame the Jews for everything. And he quotes Hitler. He says, as Hitler says, people will come confused and disheartened if they feel there are multiple enemies. As such, all enemies should be combined into one enemy, which is the Jews. And then goes on to say, this is pretty much objectively true anyway, but we want to leave out any and all nuance. So, and that, includes, so one of the things that we see in current politics is that is the whole white genocide trope, that basically Jews are responsible for immigration policies and promoting intermarriage. And this, given the demographics in the US, where, we're going to have a white minority in whatever 20 years or so. I can't remember the exact date. That we're basically going to destroy the right race, and it's all because of the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're so powerful, like, with our
Extremely
space
powerful.
lasers and our whatever. Yeah.
And actually, and now we're looking at this, and I say, this is a thing that's been around for a long time. The protocols, Elder of Zion, and again, it's been debunked. There's plenty of information where it came from, what it was purporting to do. During COVID, I spoke with a guy. We live on the second floor, and there's a little storefront. They make a lot of interior design and fireplaces for sort of luxury homes. And the guy who owns it, I sometimes chat with him when he stands out there smoking, and I say, how's the COVID going? He goes like, oh, that's totally fucked up. We don't get the deliveries and this and that and that and this. And he's basically, and again, me from a very left Marxist analysis, structural analysis standpoint, was like, oh, the guy is explaining what's wrong with capitalism, basically. Interesting, I didn't think he was a leftist, right? So he very accurately describes what the problem is with the just in time, with sort of different profit motives, etc., with globalization, etc. And Sarah, you can guess what kind of conclusion he came to, that this
It's
is
all my fault.
it's the Jews. It's your fault. Specifically says Sarah Littman has this
Yes.
button and she pushed it. No, but then he
Yeah.
says he mentions the Great Reset, and he says, "Do you know the Great Reset?" And I go like, "No, what is that?" And he goes like, "Oh my
Oh
God, you
God.
gotta look it up."
Yeah.
So I looked it up, and Charles Schwab, and people can look this up. It's really fascinating. The founder of the World Economic Forum, and there's actually a great article in the Intercept by Naomi Klein entitled "The Great Reset Conspiracy Smoothie." Just read that article. It's absolutely fascinating how basically a situation where the big capitalists were really, really afraid that the consumer is getting, onto their game, is trying to give them a little bit of a bone, that whole thing has also been sort of twisted into an anti-Semitic global conspiracy. It is fascinating.
Yeah, I want to read her book, her latest book.
Yeah,
I've
doppelganger. Yeah.
Yeah, I've a journalist friend of mine was reading it. We were on a panel together about book banning, and she was reading it, and she's like, "Oh my God, you need to read this book." So it's on my to be read pile.
Also on mine. Now, Sarah, it comes the very difficult part of the program where you have to stand up, I'm sorry, and
Okay,
go
all right,
forward to the lectern.
all right. Stand up. I'm doing that now, I think. Yep, here I
Yeah,
go.
you're standing up, and you're walking forward to the book display in the diversity section of the book club, which is everywhere.
Wait, hold on. I have to click on myself. Wait, click on
Yeah.
myself. Okay.
You just use your
No.
left, right arrow keys to walk forward to the book display. I can actually also move it a little closer to you. Here it is. There you go.
Oh, wait, no. Now I'm in
Mm.
front of it. Wait.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh,
You're good.
no. Oh, okay. All right, good.
Yeah. I'm moving the display. I'm basically what Scholastic should be doing is moving the diversity books right up front and center.
Yeah.
And now we're gonna hear an excerpt here. This is where Declan, who is already kind of halfway down the rabbit hole. Remember, folks, he's being radicalized here through a game called Imperialist Empires, and he already has his friends. He's at home. He can't play baseball. His arm is all messed up, and his friend Jake, who is Jewish, comes in and he says, "Do you want to play this?" Declan says, "Do you want to play this game?" And he's starting to play the game. And here we go.
Okay, so this is from Jake, who's the Jewish
Oh
character's
yeah,
point of
we
view.
also have to say this is from Jake's point of view. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Imperialist Empires isn't the best game I've ever played, but it's fun enough, and while we're playing, Declan seems happier, almost like his old self. Then I hear one of the other people playing say, "Yeah, killed another towelhead." Wow. Whoa, that's so wrong, I say to Declan in an aside. It's just a joke, he says, without even taking his eyes off the screen. I glance over at Cody, but he's pretty into the game and isn't paying attention to Declan and me. But that's not all. Peppered throughout the chat are comments about politics and how we should have killed all the Muslims back in the Crusades, and because now London has become Londonistan and Europe is turning into Eurabia. Someone starts complaining that because of the Crusaders ended up losing to the Muslims in medieval times, we have to prepare for a 21st century crusade in case they start taking over our country with Sharia law. It's also blatantly Islamophobic. I can't keep listening without saying anything. Am I the only one hearing this crap? I ask, wondering why no one else seems to mind. Come on, Jake, it's a game, Deck says. Yeah, good work, my brothers. A guy says, Odelrune 88 says, we've reclaimed the holy city for Christians. It's a holy city for Jews and Muslims, too, I mutter to my friends. Since when did you become such a social justice warrior, Jake? You sound like Kaylee, Declan says. Like you said, it's just a game. I know, but you don't believe this crap about Muslims trying to take over Europe like today, do you? It is kind of a lot, Cody admits. Declan is ignoring us, totally absorbed in the game. Hello, I say, waving my hand in front of his face. Do you even hear us? Sighing, Declan finally looks away from the screen. What happened to your sense of humor? Wait, so it's our fault for not finding this crap funny? Cody asks. What part of it's just a joke don't you understand? Declan says in a tone that implies we're the idiots here for not laughing. The part where I know it's not, I tell him, pushing back. You don't even know these guys, Declan protests. They joke around a lot. They say crap for the lulz just to get a reaction. Then one of the guys in the chat starts talking about globalists. He's droning on about how the globalists that control the media and the banks are promoting radical feminism and loose immigration policies to emasculate white men and achieve white genocide. Whoa, Cody says, glancing over at me wide-eyed. You've got to be kidding me, I say, tossing the controller down. I'm so angry I'm about to explode. Declan puts down his controller and sighs, what now? You're spending more time whining than you are gaming. Are you even hearing the things these idiots are saying, I asked? You realize by globalists, they mean people like me, right? What do you mean people? Oops, I moved. Oops. Oh, sorry. What do you mean people like you? Jewish people I bite out between gritted teeth. That's who. No way, Declan protests. They're talking about the international group of people who control the banks and the media and, in other words, Jews, I say. Or at least that's what the anti-Semitic conspiracy theory claims. That's total crap. They haven't used the word Jews once, Declan says. He looks at Cody. Did you hear them say Jew? Did you? Cody looks like he wants to be anywhere but the middle of this. No, but Declan's still trying to play along with the game, and that pisses me off. Can you stop for a moment and listen to me, I say, grabbing his controller? This is important, Deck. I'm listening, he says. Are you telling me I'm dumb because I don't get it? No, I'm just saying I know what globalist means because it's part of some old anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, I tell him. My chest tightens. Declan's one of my best friends. Why won't he listen? That's not what they're saying, Declan insists. I put down his controller and stand up. Stay if you want to, Cody, but I'm out of here. I guess that's enough, right?
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna that's a good place to end. So this is what we were talking about, where Declan says we're just joking around, and I think it's not in that scene. But what I found really interesting also is, and you can stand. We can go to the next read in a second. But one of the guys in that excerpt, his username was Odelrune88. I mean, I would assume that people know what 88 stands for. It's the eighth letter of the alphabet, right?
Yeah,
which is H,
it's HH. Yeah.
and
So,
which stands for praise that little Austrian dude who created all this mayhem starting in my country. But the
and then
other,
the Odal rune. Yeah, well, you can explain that. You know it better than me, probably.
actually, I didn't until very recently, where I, as a metalhead, was looking at this guy from the Swedish metal band who turned into a total white supremacist he's a prepper white supremacist, and then I learned about this whole rune stuff. I was completely oblivious on that. But and I still feel ill-equipped to explain it. So that's why I'm gonna cop out and go to another username. This username, which is on the big slide now, is IOKTBW. What kind of weird
Yeah,
username is that?
that's for it's okay to be white.
And you know
So,
what? And I heard that here in the context in Second Life early on with the book club. There was one guy who I knew for a long time, who was very friendly, very active in Second Life in the tiny community, and he started talking about this at one book club meeting. And what goes hand in hand with this, okay, it's okay to be white, what I heard in other circumstances as well, is when people use basically a kind of a whataboutism in a very simplistic way and say, well, you know, white people were enslaved too. Have
oh
have you
yeah,
have you heard
yeah.
that?
Oh yes, yeah. I've heard it all. Well, not at all, but I've heard a lot of that kind of stuff. Um, for research, I was lurking in like white nationalist chat. Oops, wait, I moved by accident. Sorry. White nationalist chat rooms on Telegram, which I could only do for very short periods of time because it was just so rapidly anti-Semitic and racist and Islamophobic. It was just like taking a shower in hate speech.
Hmm.
So I would kind of dip in, look at it for like 10 minutes, and then go have to like purge my brain. But the problem is you can't purge your brain. Like it just
Were
stays
they
there.
asking
And
you where you came from, or was it not
no, because
like
I,
they didn't?
I mean I did it on like a throwaway account, and I never said anything. I just looked.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was horrible, and it kind of made me realize just how awful the internet can be.
Let's go to
And
this. Let's go to this next reading right away. Why not? Because what is really interesting, and I mean it, it's pretty obvious now that I read it. We're like, yeah, it's brilliant, but you know what? It's the best thing to use is that the game evolves around the Crusades, and then also that the school assignment is around the Crusades because they're talking about the Crusades. Um, Real quick before we read that excerpt, was that the idea in the beginning, or did you have sort of alternative historical periods that you thought like, oh, they would work well for a game and also as the way in to the basically describe the supremacy of European thought, which is kind of what happened in those 200 years.
well,
I don't even know if there's any other sort of historic period where it's more where the combination between yeah, we feel good because we're white Europeans plus swords, all the stuff that appeals to young men basically. Um,
yeah. Well, I grew up in England, so and my former mother-in-law was French, so like I mean, I heard all about Richard Coeur de Lion, and but honestly, there were so many crusader images in
mhm,
on January 6th,
mhm,
um, that I really had I actually stepped up the whole crusader part of the book.
mhm,
I already had the game Imperialist Empires, but after January 6th, I really delved into it even more because I felt like, it was so important to, and there's a lot of great I used to follow all these great medieval historians on Twitter, but I'm not on Twitter anymore. But yeah, I read, a lot by these historians who were trying to debunk the white nationalist narrative about the Crusades.
And that narrative is, because I'm not an expert, I just am a guy who is putting up slides that we got off Wikipedia 2 hours before the program. Thank God Wikipedia is still there, because Elon Musk wants to probably destroy that one too. But so
oh my God, yeah.
The Crusades was a period of, here this is straight from Wikipedia, Crusades to the Holy Land are the best known of the religious wars associated with the term, beginning in 1095 and lasting about 2 centuries. These crusades began with the fervent desire to wrest the Holy Land from the Muslims, and ran through 8 major numbered crusades and dozens of minor crusades over this period. So this then, the trope of the white nationalists is that the crusades basically show that white people, white Christians, are superior in any aspect of everything.
Right. And yeah, and white Europeans. And they were also a time of like huge anti-Semitism as well, like in, in Germany and France, and yeah. So.
All right. Now let's read the second excerpt here.
Okay.
And we already mentioned school plays an important role. And here in this excerpt, we see Declan actually looking forward to his school assignment of writing a paper, an essay, or whatever it was, on the Crusades, because he likes the history teacher, and now he's also an expert on the Crusades because he's playing the game.
Okay, here we go. So we're now in Declan's head. The one bright spot is that we finally reached the Crusades in Mr. M's world history class. I'm going to ace this part of class for sure. I need to so I can pull off a decent grade by the end of the quarter. I'm psyched we're finally at the Crusades, aren't you? I say to Finn as we walk to history. At least this unit should be easy. Finn shakes his head. How can you still be so naive after everything Ronan's taught us, he says. Morrison's just going to give us some dumb woke version of history, not what really happened. I don't know. I had him last year and he was pretty good. The whole education system is about turning us into sheeple so we can be good little workers and do what the government tells us, Finn says. I already know more than most teachers by being self-taught. I laugh, thinking he's joking, but then I realize he's not. I know you're smart and all, but seriously, you think you know more about history than Mr. M? He went to college and studied all this crap. College is just another way they try to get us to burden ourselves with debt, so we have to become indentured servants for corporations, Vince says. It's all about them having cheap labor. What he says makes sense. Without a baseball scholarship, that's exactly what going to college would mean for me. Why do you think the globalists keep pushing for more immigration, Finn reminds me? It's so they can lay off guys like your dad and bring in immigrants who will work for less. Finn's right about that, I think, as we walk into the classroom and take our seats. But I know Morrison from social studies last year, and because he helped coach Criscoli run baseball practices last spring. I still think he'll give the truth a fair shake. Okay, folks, let's get started, Mr. M says. We've been talking about what we call the Dark Ages of the medieval period, from the fall of the Western Roman Empire to the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire. Now we're going to turn our attention to the Crusades. He goes to the whiteboard and picks up a marker. There are a lot of misconceptions about this period of history, so let's jot down some of the prior knowledge you have. There were a bunch of holy wars between Christians and Muslims, Ryan Peters calls out. That's the common belief, Mr. M says, but history is actually more complex than that, as we'll discuss as we go through the unit. Finn throws me an I told you so glance. They were ridiculously long, Jake says. They went on for like 2 centuries. It's true, the Crusader period went on for 2 centuries, although there were a number of different crusades rather than one long one, Mr. M says. Yeah, they're like the medieval equivalent of Marvel movies, Jake jokes. I smile despite myself. They were a lengthy franchise, that's for sure, Mr. M says. He looks around the classroom. Anyone want to add? It was all because the Muslims invaded Europe, Carl Higgins says confidently. Okay, Mr. M says. He writes it on the whiteboard, but his questioning tone signals to the rest of the class that it's wrong.
Mhm.
I thought Morrison was better than this. I didn't want Finn to be right about him. A few people add their ideas to the list, and then Mr. M asks if we notice anything about what people have said so far. It's like all like the Christians are the good guys and Muslims are the bad guys, Ariel says. Figure she'd say something like that. Excellent, Ariel, Morrison says. One of the things we don't often consider when learning about the Crusades is that it has historically been told from a Western European Christian point of view. Europe in medieval times is also portrayed as being homogeneously white, which wasn't the case. It was a much more diverse society than is often pictured in popular culture, particularly in port cities where trading took place. Finn mutters something under his breath I didn't quite catch. We also hear a lot about the Christian crusaders bringing civilization to the infidels, but we don't hear much about how much more advanced medieval Islamic societies were in many ways than the kingdoms of Western Europe, Mr. Morrison says. That's total crap, Finn says, loud enough to be heard this time. We don't often hear that because it isn't true, Finn says, his arms crossed over his chest. Europe was white and their society was much more advanced. The Crusades helped civilize the rest of Europe and the Middle East. It's true from what I've read about the Crusades. Noble Crusader knights brought civilization to the Muslim hordes who were living in squalor and poverty. It's proven historical fact.
Fantastic. This is Sarah Dara Littman reading from Some Kind of Hate. And again, this is really the complexity or the challenge that we're up against in civil society, in a complex society. You may sit down now again, Sarah. Thank you for
Okay.
I know the scary part is over. We have 10 minutes left
No,
in
the
the
scary
program.
part's going to sit.
Right. You need to go back and sit, and then you click the thingy, and then you choose a
Yeah, no,
sit.
I think I got it now. Sit here. There we go.
It's
Okay.
harder. It's
Whoop.
harder than the Crusades. Yeah, click the couch one more time, and then choose your favorite sit. Click the
Okay.
couch, and then you choose. I'm on female 3 right now,
Yeah,
but
I think I'm on that too. Okay.
anyways, this is fantastic, and here's a quote from you that Shyla pulled, which I really like because I often, when I get into conversations, randomly on the street with being sort of an outgoing person with a dog, I get into a lot of conversations, and then sometimes you feel, can you sort of deprogram someone, or is it a lost cause, or do I move on? What you say here, what the process of this book did was change how I react to people who hold those views, especially young people, because I learned that most people aren't initially attracted to the movement because of the ideology, right? It's because they're
Yeah.
missing something in their lives, and becoming part of the group gives them community, identity, and purpose. And again, this goes back to what you're sort of lampooning, the Jordan Peterson character, because that's what he has to sell. He says there is instability. They all say that. And the excerpt that you just read, Finn, the other guy in the school who's also falling down this rabbit hole, I mean, he gets it right. I mean, the system is here to exploit workers, but it's not the Jews, it's not the globalists, it's global capital, and there is no uh, conspiracy. The conspiracy is the class differences and the class solidarity among people who have all the dough. And it's frustrating, but what your quote here, I really like that, because I think it's important to spend time when you encounter a young person who is searching, and you have some sort of influence. And this happened to me a few times here in Second Life, and also in Sansar, back in the Sansar VR days. And Shyla may remember this. There was a lot of people, young people, who would start saying stuff where you go like, hey, wait a minute, that's where do you get that stuff? And I always I made it a point to spend time with them and find out, what's going on here. one time we bumped into a guy in Sansar who was from Sweden, and he said, Sweden was a great country, but now the immigrants are coming in and they're stealing everything, and my grandma has nothing to eat. That's how he opened the conversation and go like, okay,
Wow.
let's break this down. And and then I think my personal view on this, as I'm active in these games, and this is also my day job, working for Linden Lab as a contractor in the video department. When I encounter people and I have a sense that there is somebody who is somewhat lost, I do spend little time to try to find out what's going on here, and trying to kind of bring him back onto a better path as much as I can. But yeah, I don't know how your policy is there. Is there a cutoff point, like, where you go like, how old are you? And the person says, I'm 30. What is it? Okay, and you say goodbye. It's too late. I don't have time for
No,
this.
I'm actually writing and researching this book has actually changed me quite a lot, in terms of how I deal with people that I disagree with strongly. What I'm trying to do is actually have conversations and trying to approach them with just curiosity, like genuine curiosity, as I did when I interviewed the former, the guy who led the Nazi party in the US for 25 years. I was scared. I was so scared to talk to him.
Wait, how did you
But
talk to him? Online, on email, or in person, or Zoom, or?
we spoke on the phone.
Mhm.
And we've stayed in touch. Like I've tried to stay in touch with everyone I interviewed. And I said to him, I was vulnerable with him. I said, look, you were my greatest nightmare growing up.
Mhm.
I used to evaluate people when I met a new person, I'd think, oh, will this person hide me in their attic if there's another Holocaust?
Mhm.
And I actually said that to this woman where I used to live, a non-Jewish woman who was quite right-wing, and she laughed in my face. And like, she just thought it was ridiculous. And I'm like,
Mhm.
lady, you have no idea.
But
Um,
this, the,
that's when you grow up in a family with Holocaust trauma,
yeah,
that's so it's very much a part of how you think.
the trauma, and
Um,
this is really important. I'm sorry. Please keep going with the story. I just want to remind folks, because again, this is the through line in your book, because Declan uses this in several instances where, yeah, we're just joking around. I'm going back to this point because words. I mean, they can there's tremendous harm in words, especially when they are uttered towards a person who is already traumatized. You cannot, and you cannot foresee that. You don't know where a person comes from, and we live in this world where there is right wingers on YouTube and everywhere who are spouting stuff, and at the same time saying, don't be such a puss, we're just joking around. Again, we talked about it before, but I think it bears repeating, that in a world where people make fun of, oh, do you need a trigger warning? You know what? It is completely okay to not bombard someone who may not have the resilience at the ready right now to bombard them with what you think is the truth that this person needs to be bombarded with.
so there's a great example I give of that. And I have mixed feelings about trigger warnings, because the fact is, even we're not always going to get them in life.
Hmm.
And an example I give is, I took my daughter to see Spring Awakening, and I bought the tickets because I heard it was good, and I had no idea what it was about. And I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I've had a lot of therapy. I was hospitalized when I was 38, like, after a suicide attempt. Like, it has had a lasting impact on me, but I am a much stronger person today. And, I always say the breakdown I had at 38 was the worst time of my life, but it actually turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. But we're at Spring Awakening. I've had all the therapy. I think I've dealt with it all. And they get to the part, I can't remember the name of the song, where like they're singing about being sexually abused. And that lizard part of your brain starts, and it's like all of a sudden you're in that trauma place. But
Oh, I
fortunately
didn't
for me,
even know what you're talking about. This is a musical that's based on a Frank Wedekind
yes,
story.
yeah.
Frühlingserwachen. Okay.
And so I'm sitting there like deep breathing, like I can get through this. It's only a song. I will get through this. But I was deeply uncomfortable during that song. And luckily the intermission came after that. And my daughter turned to me and she was like, "Mom, were you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was a little stressed, but I'm okay now." But like, so I think like you can end up, I would have liked to know that was coming. It might have helped me deal with it better, but you still have to learn the techniques to get through it.
I
Um,
agree. I agree
yeah,
with you 100%. I'm so
yeah,
glad that you told this story. I agree with you 100% because you are much more nuanced in response to what I said, as I probably came across as someone who says, okay, you know what, whoever, you people who criticize trigger warnings, you guys are a-holes. I think it's important to develop a method to live in this world, and that has to do with a certain amount of resilience. And what you're describing, especially in art, if it's music, books, films, etc., art needs to make. I mean, my definition of art is, if I had to give one, is that art needs to make you uncomfortable to some extent, or it's just basically entertainment. And I do differentiate between entertainment and art. I know people have a different opinion, and I assure my audience I'm not going to go on a 30-minute rant because we're running out of time. I'm going to be brief. So in books specifically, I think, but there's a nuance here. What I mean is, and this is what I learned, is I cannot. I'm very involved in politics. I used to run an NPR station, a news department, etc. This is something that is very important to me. But what I have learned is I cannot throw, the daily news barrage onto people who are not ready for that, right? And I used to be, 10 years ago, I was probably, oh my God, people are just putting their head in the sand. They don't care. Nobody cares. You need to wake them up. The sheeple. Not in that regard. But you know what I'm saying. And now I'm just more, I think I have more empathy for people where I don't know what kind of trauma they come from. So I'm not going to bombard them with a deep discussion about really, really tough issues of today's complex society. So I don't know.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Sarah. This program is not about me, but how would you agree with me or diagnose me as healed somehow?
I think, yeah, I think so. Um, I think, we all have our challenges, and that's why hopefully we learn how to treat people with compassion and be curious. It's funny. So this guy who lives two doors down from me is clear like a big Trumpist, and like he spends half the year in Florida and then comes up here in the summer, what we call snowbirds in this part of the country. And he flew this flag. He only did it for one day, so I think someone must have complained to him, but he flew this flag saying impeach Biden.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to go down, knock on his door, and just ask him, like, I just wanted to say, like, oh, I saw your flag. I'm really curious, like, what are the constitutional grounds that you would use to, impeach Biden?
Wow.
And I really wanted to do it. And my husband was like, don't you dare. Like, um, but I'm very involved with StoryCorps, which is a organization here in the States. My son interviewed me when he was 12, and they made a video, a animation of it, and it's had over 1 million hits on YouTube. And then we've sort of gone back through the years. It's now the 20th anniversary, so they're
Oh,
going to be doing an update.
oh, that is
Um,
so cool. Okay.
but they started this program called One Small Step, which I am hugely behind, that they are trying to put together people from different political points of view and have them have a one-on-one conversation where they don't talk politics to begin with. They talk about, family and values, and so they're trying to get them to connect on a personal and emotional level. It's based on the contact theory that if you have contacts with people who are different from you
Hmm.
and develop a relationship, then you actually, it's harder to hate them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
so
Well,
anyway,
yeah.
so that's kind of where I come from now. I try to think about, approach people with curiosity, which, I mean, as a writer, you kind of have to, you have to approach people with curiosity.
But
And
again, but isn't there a line that you wouldn't cross? I mean, again,
well,
I
if
I
someone,
agree with
like,
you, but if
yeah,
you I mean, this is like, there's obviously, if if the Jews just were to sit down with the Nazis at a table and discuss their differences and their different points of view that they're come from, I'm sorry, that
well,
stuff
there
doesn't
has to,
work.
well, so these are moderated conversations.
Hmm.
I wouldn't walk into a Nazi gathering and just be like, hey guys, guess what, I'm Jewish, and expect to have a good conversation. However, I would highly recommend, if a documentary made by the Muslim filmmaker Dia Khan. She did this documentary called White Right Meeting the Enemy, which I cannot recommend enough. So she embedded herself with different white supremacist groups.
Ah. Hmm.
Um, and she actually interviewed Jeff Scoop, who I interviewed, the head of the neo-Nazi part, in the Nazi Party in the U.S. Um, while he was still in the Nazi Party, and was with him at Charlottesville.
I was going
And
to ask you earlier if that guy then left when you talked to him, or if he was deprogrammed somehow.
he had already left by
Hmm.
the time I spoke to him. But what was so interesting about that documentary, and I actually asked him about it when I talked to him, was the camera's on him, and she starts reading him social media comments that people have sent her.
Hmm.
Um, um, like calling her, I don't want to repeat the slurs, but, like, basically calling her all these really awful slurs.
Hmm.
And they close in the camera on his eyes, and you can see how uncomfortable he is,
Hmm.
because he's developed a relationship with her. And when I asked him about it, I said, that was one of the most powerful parts of the documentary. He said, like, yeah, she, and this is, I think, very important, she treated me with respect. And I
Hmm.
think for a lot of people who get involved in these groups, they have not felt respected in their
Hmm.
lives. And so, like, going to these, becoming these tough, like, stormtrooper types, like, they, through violence, they think they can get respect rather than actually, treating other people with respect too.
Right.
Um, I
This
just
this
want
is
I just want to say one more thing, an interesting thing that
please.
happened. I did a visit this summer with a program that had read the book, and I was I was telling them about how my husband would hear me when I watched for research, because there's so many different vectors into this ideology, and one of them is misogyny.
Mhm.
And
I was going to ask you that because that is also the through line. This is whole the Jordan Peterson thing. This is the misogyny, how he always gets in there. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
so I watched more of these than I would like to, but I watched all these alpha male videos. You can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes here. So alpha
Hmm.
male with in quotation marks videos. And basically it was like all these roided up bearded dudes telling other dudes what women want. And I'm doing air quotes again. And and my husband would hear me screaming. His office is down the hall, because I'd be like, thing like what women actually want, like, are you fucking kidding me? So I was talking to these teenagers. I did not swear when I talked to them, even though I'm sure they all swear too. But I said to them, if you want to, I said to to you young men who are here, if you want to know what a woman wants, the best thing you can do is talk to her like she's a human being and see what she's interested in, and like, ask her questions about herself and listen to the answers. Like, it's really, and so but what was really funny was this, it's always the shy ones who come up afterwards and talk to you privately. So this
Yeah.
very sweet young man came up to me and sort of like, I signed his book, and he said, I bet I know what they said in those alpha male videos. And I was like, oh, like, what do you think? Like, what? And he said, yeah, he probably said to insult them, and he basically quoted all this shit that you heard in the alpha male videos. And I was like, yeah, that's what I heard too. But really, if you take one thing away from what you've heard me talk about today, please let it be that if you want to know what women want, just ask them questions. And so I hopefully trying to cure young men of
You cured.
thinking the alpha male one man
Yeah,
at a
but you
time.
cure. I mean, you went through as they say in the Shawshank Redemption movie, you crawled through a mile of shit. You watched a bunch of alpha male videos, and then now you can deprogram them. I was just gonna say for the record, not all bearded dudes,
No,
um,
no, I know. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't want
but
to
also Andrew
disparage
Tate.
bearded dudes.
Oh, wait, Andrew Tate does have a beard, but anyway, I digress.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah. Oh God, yeah. He's really bad. The other thing that I think you would find amusing, and your audience may find amusing, is that I could barely stand watching Jordan Peterson. Like, I feel like he's like a not
Yeah,
particularly smart person's
yeah,
idea of what a smart person
yep,
is.
precisely.
And so I offered my son money. I was like, I will pay you to listen to Jordan Peterson videos and like just write me a summary. And he wouldn't do it. He was like, no thanks, mom. Like,
Oh my God, this is brilliant. Th- I made my son watch Jordan Peterson, and he said, "No way, mom."
yeah, I offered to pay him good money so that I didn't have to watch it.
I mean, these things are so, when anyway, we need to wrap it. This is such a wonderful conversation, Sarah. It's so great to have you here. I'm such a big fan, and I always keep my bookshelf stocked with your books. And I recommend this to everyone, honestly, because what I do when we have family or friends over, or somebody knows a teenager or whatever, I I grab a book and I give it to them, and they take it home, and I buy another one. I think that that's very important. I'm also known to take books and put them in the little free libraries around town.
Oh, great.
Uh,
Love them.
I don't. Yeah, it's a relatively, being from Munich, Germany. I always say I spent much less money than the people who go to the Oktoberfest and get completely hammered, where one beer costs 15 euros now or something like that, completely insane. Um, where was I? Yeah, we're going to wrap it up here. Sarah, thank you so much for coming. The book is Some Kind of Hate. There's a lot of other books. You go to Sarah's website. Deepfake is great. Want to Go Private was my way in, where Sarah is basically saying that a Second Life kind of world is really dangerous and you should never go in it. Now she's in it herself. No, she didn't say that, but uh, making stuff up. If you like to support us with this program, Shyla, put the tip jar out because this is all volunteer driven. Linden Lab is providing the islands, but that's it. There is no budget. There is also no profit incentive here. The incentive is to deprogram people in the sense that it's good to read books. That's the nefarious agenda. Shyla, if you put the tip jar out, then people can tip, or people can also join the YouTube channel. People can put up a donation via Ko-fi, which is linked on the YouTube. I'm going to go through the credits here real quick. Second Life Book Club was established April 8th, 2020. Unbelievable. The show is produced by yours truly, camera and sound by Isabel Sharon. Avatars are made by Bespoke Caravan. Research by Shyla, the Super Gecko, and Monkey. Location is always second.live/book club. And then you'll get teleported here. The calendar is at dragster.com/SL Book Club. We have two sponsors. Bespoke Caravan, as mentioned, they make absolutely fantastic, the best fantastical avatars. I'm told these are not furries. They also make furries, but they make more than furries. They make the whole slew of incredibly fantastical avatars. Go check them out. They have a huge sim or several regions with their wares on display. The other sponsors, of course, my friend Arden Schwartzman from the Black Forest. He makes ultra realistic board games. He makes your favorite games that you know, Othello, chess, etc. But he also actually designs his own games. They're very cheap, they're low land impact, and they're highly detailed. The next show is November 8th. There was a scheduling issue with these two folks, Rebecca Giblin and Cory Doctorow. They wrote a book together called Choke Point Capitalism. And that is November 8th at 5 p.m. Second Life time. 5 p.m. Second Life time. It's a brutal time for Europeans, but we have to do what we have to do. And this was the time available. I know Isabel, who's running camera, and I was like, oh, can we do this? Can we do this at 2 a.m? Yes, we can. That's it. That's the Second Life Book Club. And I'll see you all next time. Goodbye, folks. Goodbye, Sarah. Have a great day.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.